In this video, we'll start building out our more complex layouts, beginning with the main products page. Now, we're definitely still beginning with the simplest of those complex layouts, and that there won't be too much to make this all work out the way we want. But let's think about what we have here first of all. We have the series of products, which you could think of in terms of a series of tiles inside of a flex container. So the Flexbox setup is a great solution for this kind of a place. So our main tag is here, but we also have a UL tag wrapped around these list items. So that UL tag will be a great hook that we'll use as our flex container to apply the Flexbox settings. Then the list items themselves are individual products, and we can use those to tile up appropriately. Then we'll actually drill inside of each of those product tiles and do another little bit of Flexbox settings, because inside of this little space, it wouldn't be so bad if we didn't have these two things side by side. But because they are side by side, we actually can use Flexbox to tell them to tile up. But if they wrap, we can make this image span the full width and let these two items sit side by side. So you'll see what we're talking about more as we get into it. Let's start with the overall setup so that we create the big picture product tiles. So we're going to go to the product page in a new tab, and we've got Code Sandbox still up here on the right, so we can simply switch over here to refresh and see things change. So let's get started on that main product page, just clearing out any of the other files that I had open. So that's the index file inside of products, and here's the markup you may recall. So one thing we can do, just to be consistent, is go ahead and put this class of page or products, plural, here, and then we can use that if we need to do any particular spacing. But now we're going to drill in, and we're going to say here we have products. In fact, maybe we call it product list to just make it a little bit more distinct. And then we have these LIs inside of here, and it may be helpful to actually identify each of these so that we can be a little bit more distinct, in that here we have class of product, singular. Okay. All right, so we have product list, and inside of that we have the individual products. Okay, so we can go into our style sheet, create a new selector for product list. Oops. Helps to spell things right. And we'll turn on Flexbox with display flex, which means that all of the items are now going to tile up and try to fit in that space, but they don't really fit there very well, do they? So we're going to turn on flex flow and use row wrap. Notice that there's no hyphen between row wrap. It's two different settings. It's flowing in the row direction as opposed to the column direction. And we're not going to try to cram everything onto one line. We're going to allow it to wrap to a new line when it runs out of space. So now you'll see that things will begin to wrap around to the next line, which is very close to what we want. Okay, so I think for now, let's move on to the individual tiles, the products themselves. So this would be the selector for product. Okay. And just to give ourselves a little bit more clarity, we know we're going to have a border on there. So 1 pixel solid, and I think it's actually this guy right here. Oh, actually, I'm going to eventually move that down to product image after all, but let's put it on here just for now so we can see our overall boxes. Okay. We also see we have these list items, so let's clear out those list items. I think they are set on the UL as a whole, which is the product list. So let's go here and undo that. List style, none. And we also can clear out that left margin that we added on all of our ULs. Okay, so now it's sitting flush to the edge, and we don't have the list items. So we are now ready to think a little bit more about the individual items here. Okay, so in our mockup, each of these tiles is 360 pixels wide. We're not going to set a width, but we do care about the gap that's between each of the items, or each of the rows, so to speak. So we're going to put a bottom margin of 40 pixels on these as well. So 360 pixels wide, bottom margin of 40 pixels. Okay, so that's the product items here. Product is going to be width 360 pixels. Margin bottom, 40, right? All right, there we have done that. Let's just double check to see that that is coming out the way that we expect it to. Okay, looking good. Okay, so now you can see that we have that gap created below the items, and we have this border on here, so we're seeing the bigger picture overall. And we'll begin to tweak the layout inside here in just a moment. But before we do, we have a few other things we need to work out to get these to work the way that the mockup is. Part of that is that they are there's a little bit of spacing on each side, and then there's a gap in the middle. Now there's a number of ways that we could do this, but here's the way I would recommend. Notice how this gap between each of them is 40 pixels, and the gap on the outside is 20 pixels. A potential solution here is to say that the space between each item is a combination of 20 pixels on the right side of one of them and 20 more pixels from the left side of the other. So essentially, if we put 20 pixels of margin on both sides of these tiles, we'll get the gap that we want on the left side, we'll get the combo gutter in the middle, the gap on the right side, and so on and so forth. So that's a nice way to create the tiling effect that we want, where we have this consistent gutter. Okay, so we're going to go here on the products, and let's see, I guess we could make use of this margin setting, changing it from margin bottom to margin overall. We're going to do 0 on the top, 20 on the sides, and still keep the 40 on the bottom. So of course remember that this is when we have 3 settings. The first one goes to top, the second one goes to both sides, and the bottom one goes to only the bottom, or the last one goes to only the bottom. Okay, so you can see that we've got the spacing that we're looking for. Now, the only reason they're not fitting is because of that border that we have on there. So when we pull that border off of here and move it down to the product image, you'll see that we get them all where we want them to be. Okay, so they're all fitting. Okay, so let's go on now and think about the inner layout. So what we have here for the inside of the tiles is that we want the image to take up the full space, but we want the price, or the product name, and the price to be tiled up side by side. So one thing we could do is wrap just these two in their own container and just flexbox that. But rather than add extra markup, I'm going to take advantage of this container out here as the flexbox container, so the hyperlink that we have a class of product link around them. And then the image, the name, and the price inside are all going to get specific styles. But first, let's make sure that we have classes on these. So product image, and then I'm going to be just a little bit more specific here and say product name and product price, rather than leaving those just at the more ambiguous name and price. Okay, let me apply that down to all of the other items. All right, with all of those classes applied consistently, let's go refresh and take a look at what happened as a result. Check it out. When we did that, our images got the borders we wanted, but they got a few other things we didn't want. Notice how this has a width of 460 pixels. That is the setting that we set up on product images, but we were thinking only of the products on the images on the actual product pages where we do have the larger size. So over here, we're going to want a smaller size. So we have a little bit of a conundrum. How are we going to distinguish the product images that are here on this page from the product images that are over on the other page? I would like to suggest that we make the other one a little bit more specific. So we're going to go over to the straight up product image settings that we have, and I'm going to pull that width out so that it's not on all product images. When I refresh, you see that these snap back to the size that we want with the gutters. This one over here on the actual product page is still going to look right if the images are the right size. But just in case, I'm going to go in and say, when I have a product image that's inside of the page product, remember we put the class out here for page product, we can say that the product image that's in this context gets a specific size. So we're going to go back up, create a nested selector up there by page product. So when we have a page product, and inside of that we have a product image, we're going to get width of 460 pixels. All right, that gives us the larger width here. You can see that setting is coming through just right, and the border is on product image on its own, and the combo creates the effect we want here without goofing around with what we need over here. Okay, so now let's keep drilling in to get the rest of the layout going for these tiles. So we said that we were going to make the link itself be display flex. So we need to find the product link and make it display flex. Let's go ahead and set up justify, flex flow row wrap. Okay, so that should set up the overall tiling effect to be in place, and you can see that where the content fits, they're tiling up, but where the name is wider, it's pushing this down to the next row. So we definitely need to get in and just set the width on these two things, and we'll also be thorough and make sure that those product widths get set as well. So this is where we're going to get more specific and say that the inside of the product link product images. So when we have a product image that's inside of product link, we're going to say width 100%. And that's just going to make sure that whatever that link is, the image inside is going to be 100 with the 100%, and it should work out fine. Okay. In fact, let's set max width 100% just in case you have smaller images. I don't know why you would, but just in case. So this says never be wider than 100% of the container, which is the product overall. Okay. Now we also have the product name and the product price to style. So here we have product name and here we have product price. And I believe that these are also getting settings from the main product pages themselves. That's individual products. So I'm going to get in here and be a little bit more specific with these again, so that we do only these styles on the page product. Okay, so those specific margin settings, they just need to be moved up with the rest of the page product stuff. So page, product image, product name, that's still alphabetized. Okay, so you can see that we're collecting all these things that apply to the page product context because we're using that naming convention. They're all ending up being organized together in our style sheet. All right, so now we can be a little bit more mindful of the fact that when we have product images and product prices inside of product link, we want some particular styles. So product link, product price is going to have a width of a certain value, and I'm obviously going to change that. And then the product name also is going to have a particular width. So let's go find out what those are from the mockups. So if I click in here, it looks like I've got a width of 260 on that and 280 on that, and they are 20 pixels apart, which is perfect. Okay, so you may have something different. The thing I would just ask you to double check is that all of your product names are set to the same width, as are all of your product prices. You're going to need to find a happy medium there where the widest price fits, and you have in mind what effect that has on the prices, while you still maintain a healthy gap or gutter between the two. Okay, so once again, that was 80 on the price and 260 on the name. So the price, let's see, 260 on the name and 80 on the price. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and put temporary borders on here so I can see what I'm working with. We'll do them both in red, and you can see now that they're tiling up consistently. And so with this wider name, when the name doesn't fit anymore, it just wraps. All right, once again, we have the extra space over on the outside, and we want that space to be in between the two. So we're going to go to our overall container here, and we're going to say justify content space between. Okay, so now that space will get distributed between the two. and we're in better shape. Let's pull off those borders and refresh. Okay, next up we need to make sure that the prices get right aligned. So again, in the product link product price, text align right. There we go. Now we just need a little bit of gap below the image. Let's go figure out how much that gap is. Looks like it's 20 pixels. So let's put that on below the product link product images right here. Margin bottom, 20 pixels. Okay, very good. So this product page is looking pretty good. Let me just make my screen wider so I can see everything. Yeah, everything is looking very nice there.